Hello, my name is Eduardo Quesada Escandon from California, and we have a lot of topics to discuss. And for that, I'm going to go directly with Ruthie Ditucci. She's president and publisher of syndicatednews.net. Let's go to Ruthie. How are you, Ruthie?
I'm fine, thank you.
So, you know, in my opinion, today and the rest of the year until November 8th, it seems to me that it's like a soap, like a novela in terms for the elections. It's kind of too much information or not enough information, good and truthful information. What are your thoughts, Ruthie?
I find that it's going to make a great Wednesday night movie. And I'm always looking to see who's going to play the role of one particular person or another.
Right. So people, in my opinion, also are not, or they have more information than they need. And some of it, I think, half and half is truth, and the other half is not truth.
Well, television and even the internet requires ratings.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We are in a very wonderful position that we are privately owned,
mm-hmm.
and we are not dependent on advertisers for income
mm-hmm.
or for any type of revenue. So we can't have a soap company, for instance, say, we're tied and we don't want you to use Cheer.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, one product cannot force another one out.
Mm-hmm.
As we experienced recently when one person wanted somebody else to have nothing to do with syndicated news. That's ridiculous. That's not happening.
So there is a positive side to the technology we have right now. We can get the information from wherever we want, like we do it with SNN.BZ.
Companies are now asking us and offering us contracts
mm-hmm.
to use their logo and give them a direct link back.
Mm-hmm.
Very qualified writers are very proud to have their work at syndicatednews.net, which, by the way, it sits on www.snn.BZ. That's
mm-hmm.
SNN.BZ.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I have 5 points I wanted to cover. The
All
first
right.
one
Let's go at it. Let me know.
Bernie, Hillary, and Donald. Finding that Bernie Sanders really does get very poor coverage, and
mm-hmm.
it's always tilted.
Mm-hmm.
It's always leaning away from all of his accomplishments.
mm-hmm.
They're rarely mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep trying to make him look like a grandfatherly type. I even spoke to one fellow who was literally slowing down whenever Bernie Sanders moves his arms to make him appear older, like an older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awful. And the other day I was watching a Trump rally where deliberately misleading anyone who was going to watch the show later, because that's not what happened. He staged that shot to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to talk about is the fact that, yes, Bernie Sanders, I feel everything that goes on with him, it's very unfair. And when Hillary Clinton's being featured on mainstream media, she's made to appear as though she's some type of a female hero. And it especially annoys me because Anderson Cooper is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
He not only gave time to the Clinton Global Initiative, he gave them a lot of money. When it happened with Stephanopoulos, he had to step down and stay away from anything having to do with the political process because he knew it would be unethical.
Right.
But who's going to challenge Anderson Cooper when they already know he's got a quick temper, and God forbid that one should say anything to someone like him because it would be politically incorrect, wouldn't it, right now? Especially this is the year of Caitlyn Jenner. No one's going to tell a gay broadcaster that he's unethical because he's going to fight and argue and embarrass the person.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to go through that experience. But he gave money to the CGI, and he had the audacity, many reporters, to ask questions of Hillary Clinton, of Chelsea, of Bill Clinton. asking them questions as though CGI, the Clinton Global Initiative, was a new thing that they knew nothing about. And another way that they gave money, and they were the foolish ones whose names wound up on the front page. We have the list of reporters, journalists that were foolish enough to get their names posted. We received those names through the Freedom of Information. And the rest that were going to give millions, including countries that we don't even have treaties with, we don't have any allegiances or alliances with, countries that we don't even have diplomatic relations with, people who are absolute criminals are putting millions into the Clinton Global Initiative, and they can do it by way of investing it in other countries. The only one I use all the time is the one that I know by heart, which is the Frank Giustra Bill Clinton Initiative. It's a clone of the Clinton Global Initiative, but it's based in Canada, because in Canada, a donor does not have to identify him or herself. They don't have to identify how many millions they're giving, investing, and they don't have to identify the source of the money either. Now, that's where the danger comes in. Because there was one fella that spent Christmas with the Clintons who gave Hillary a check from the same account where he used to launder his Colombian cocaine money.
Wow.
If it doesn't bother her, well, it certainly doesn't bother anybody else. But these people, these criminals, one after another, they go to jail. And I even sent an open message to Bryan Pagliano that the Clintons are a people that will ask you to give them a hand, but when things get bad, they'll throw you under the bus. And he was, I guess, smart enough to cut himself a deal with the Department of Justice so that he could actually testify and not just sit there and take the fifth. And he took the deal, and once they gave him the deal, now his emails have magically, poof, they've disappeared. What games they played. This is like a telenovela. You couldn't make this stuff up if you were looking to write a script about politics.
Yes.
Because it would seem too outrageous.
So what are you saying, in short, is that there is a lot of influence, there's a lot of, I guess, corruption, if you compare us with other countries in Latin America where you can buy candidates with money.
You can buy them here as well, except that you don't do it out in the open. You put the money in through the Frank Giustra, Bill Clinton program in Canada, and then it's transferred to the U.S.
Or it was done all the time, and we didn't know about it.
It's been done all the time, and I've been writing about it all the time. People just don't want to hear bad news. They just don't.
Okay, so
the election process, this super delegate nonsense, how the election laws are different state to state. People think that they actually have a say, and I understand why they're so disgusted and they don't want to vote anymore, because things such as Hillary saying, "Oh, I got it wrapped up. Don't worry about it. I got the super delegates wrapped up, so it doesn't matter." Well, when she says it doesn't matter, you know what that means to me? I don't matter. My vote doesn't matter. And that's when, the minute she said that, thousands of people decided, well, fine, I'm not voting.
Well,
because she said she had it wrapped up. And that's exactly what she wants to happen, because those people would most likely have voted for Bernie or possibly Donald Trump.
Talk about not voting.
Trump, they always try to make him look like a wild animal.
Yeah. What about at the last minute in California, some voters are already decided not to vote because they already declared Hillary
that should be illegal.
It is, but it's a fact. It's happening.
It's a fact, and they did it anyway. It's the way they're breaking laws. It's outrageous, and people don't realize what I'm trying to explain is that these voting rules, they're unusual, and they're different from state to state. But a lot of these new voters, they don't even know the history of what brought all that on. The super delegates and how it's different from state to state and all these different rules. These different rules and these super delegates and all these exceptions to the rules were created to cut out the very people that the establishment didn't want in the voting booth. Minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. And they don't, and the current day people don't even realize that those rules that they're fighting for were meant to cut them out 40, 50, 60 years ago.
The only positive side that I see, Ruthie, is that if voters go to the polls, they will be counted for. They will show on the statistic that they voted, and it will show the numbers of people that are voting. Don't you think?
And there's a specific card that a Democrat has to receive in order to vote for Bernie or for the Libertarian, for instance.
Right.
And at the voting locations, guess what card they're not giving? That very same card. They're giving people the card that counts for Hillary.
Right. So people have no option, no other option.
This is like a third world election. And voting redistricting, you know, when they start redistricting the areas and the geography, it's just a modern day version of the same discrimination. And the reason the public has been so duped into rallying behind Hillary Clinton is because many of them weren't born when Hillary began her public and private tyrannical behavior, her public life.
Okay.
As for Trump, he says stupid things and he puts his own foot in his mouth. It's heartbreaking. Bernie Sanders is a reasonable man, but he almost always gets blamed for everything.
Right.
But the biggest sin he's got is that Trump has is that he's too honest. He's got to stop telling the truth and be quiet, because society isn't ready to hear the truth directly. But because they're hearing it and they recognize it, that's what this upswell behind Trump is.
And the scary thing is that he's got millions of followers.
Yeah, and it's not scary. It's real. And it will happen again and again when the public feels cut out and the media makes little statements such as, oh, well, we understand these voting issues and the public doesn't. Well, the minute you say that, you're telling me as a public listener, as a viewer, that I'm foolish or uneducated or that you're smarter than me. That's offensive. When I hear that, it's offensive.
So according to Trump, my children are not American.
Correct. And according to Trump, neither am I.
That is the most ridiculous. I actually asked my wife. She was born in San Antonio. She's never lived in any other country, which her parents and grandparents came from Mexico. And I said straight to her, I said, my wife, are you American? You consider yourself American? Of course I do. Not according to Donald Trump. And she just turned like this. He's nuts. Okay. So we are not Americans, Ruthie.
No.
According to Trump.
And then there's also the reality that some families came to the United States without permission.
Yeah, that's...
See what I'm saying? And they brought their children here, and their children, those are the dreamers. We've got to deal with all of that.
Wow. Okay. Well...
And that is what the world is laughing at. They're not laughing at the United States because they think we're funny as a nation. They're laughing at us because our hypocrisies are very laughable. They're very entertaining. When you're in New York City, for instance, and you want to go to New Jersey, there are still low-hanging bridges. And people don't understand. You can't get a tall U-Haul 18-foot truck. You can't get it through there. You can't get regular commercial trucks through there. Why is that? Because the locals didn't want city folk to come in the bus.
Yes.
Their maids and their butlers came from New York City, from Harlem, and they would take the bus into Jersey. But they didn't want them in their neighborhood on the bus. They wanted the bus to have to stop there and then have the house workers, the housekeepers, walk into the neighborhood. I wanted to talk about the gorilla.
The gorilla, okay.
That little child fell in the enclosure by accident. Okay. Absolutely accidental.
Okay.
If there was enough room for the child's body to slip through under the fence, that means that it's time to update and upgrade the fence. Doesn't mean the child did anything wrong. Doesn't mean the mother was negligent. But for days and days and days, they kept trying to make this a matter of parents being negligent. The child fell in. They had to shoot the gorilla. How awful. Let's have charges. And it turns out that the media wasn't calling the zoo or the district attorney to find out if charges would be handed down, but rather kind of encouraging charges. Aren't you going to charge them? Aren't you going to arrest them? You know, the father's got a criminal background. They turned the whole matter into a morality issue. Oh, well, the little boy's father's got some criminal background, so now it's a moral issue, and since we're high and mighty, we've got to have this guy arrested. The reality is that children have accidents. These things happen, but I want to show you a comparison of accidents with a toddler. Here's an accident where they have to choose between the child's life and the gorilla's. And thank goodness the people that work at the zoo quickly chose to kill the gorilla. They kept using the expression, you know, lowland silverback gorilla can crush a coconut in one hand. What they're trying to explain to you is that it's the normal practice, it's the custom, it's the habit of the gorilla to crush the skull of an intruder. He can't reason, oh, this is a little toddler that's going to go to preschool in a year or so. He can't reason. He's an animal. He's a wild animal. He thinks, oh, my female gorillas are here. This is an intruder. I must kill it. These people know this gorilla. They raised this gorilla. They've been with him for years. They knew that the next step was that he was going to kill the child. That would have been awful. And then they would have killed the gorilla anyway. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. They could have put him to sleep too, right?
No, you can't, because that takes too much time. This is a lowland. Remember, did you see the hair on his back, how it was sticking up? That's a very angry sign. That's a warning sign.
Right.
He's on guard. He's on guard. He was the next step would be that he would kill the child. And if you use
force,
even a fast-acting agent, you've got two things running through that animal's bloodstream. You've got testosterone and you've got adrenaline. That's a dangerous combination to be with a 3-year-old. You've got to eliminate the animal quickly or you're going to lose the child. You have to choose between the two. But here's a comparison.
Okay.
In 1991, I know you must remember back then, we used to carry police radios. It was at the Galleria building on 57th Street. I didn't recognize the owner of the apartment. I didn't know the name, but that's because the owner of the apartment was the name released. However, the person using the apartment was the lovely Italian model and actress, Lori, who had gotten romantically involved with a married man. That man, there was Lori Del Santo, and she got involved with Eric Clapton, who was still married to the woman he stole from George Harrison from the Beatles. Her name was Patty Boyd.
Let me find a picture of Eric Clapton. I think I have one.
Yeah, with the little boy Connor.
There it is. Okay.
So not only was he married to someone else, a woman he took from another man. You know, he was doing some guitar work on the Beatles, some Beatles song, and he met Patty Boyd, and the next thing you know, he takes off with her. He's still married to Patty Boyd while he gets involved with this Italian actress model. And what she wants is to have a baby in the worst way. So now they have a baby, little Connor. Little Connor, they're using the apartment. It's on the 53rd story. They have the sliding windows that you can clean. They don't have those windows anymore because they're too, they're too dangerous. And it's at the floor level and it's totally open. The little child comes running. He's playing hide and go seek with the nanny, and the little child runs right out the open window from the 53rd story. He landed on an adjacent building. He died on impact.
Wow.
But the point is, This was a white family, a very well-to-do family. Eric
Right.
Clapton, multi-Grammy winning award musician. So what happens? He writes Tears from Heaven. He's on every daytime talk show. He's doing the late night circuit. He's promoting the song. It's doing great. It's #1 on all the radio stations. Everybody's bawling and crying over it. There was no investigation. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was investigated. The media wasn't calling the police station asking, are you going to arrest Eric Clapton and Laurie Del Santo for being negligent and letting that child fall out the window? None of that went on. And if we're going to look at backgrounds, say, you know, with the black family in Cincinnati, Ohio Zoo, oh, the father's got a criminal background. Let's talk about Eric Clapton for a minute. First of all, his #1 love at the time were drugs. Drugs and any woman that was breathing. And that's the reality at that time. That was, then not now, of course, now he leads a very normal life, I hope. But that's the life he led then. And you're married to one woman that you stole from somebody else, and you had a child with another woman. So you had the child out of wedlock, too. So if we want to get moralistic, you could have used all of that. That would have been a great story. But no, they instead film him and his current wife, Patty Boyd, showing up in England to bury the little boy in Surrey, where he comes from. And even George Harrison went to the funeral. I mean, imagine, now that's a telenovela. But they didn't make it ugly and awful and try to encourage the police to arrest any of them. So there's a tremendous difference between how mainstream media treats minorities and well-to-do or white families in general. There's a tremendously separate set of rules, and I see them too clearly, and I find them annoying. Yeah. Yesterday, I listened to CNN give a Stamford rape recital. They took that letter and read it with every anatomical description of the private parts. I don't know where this might be heard, so I want to not be too vulgar. But they used, it sounded like an anatomical medical dissertation.
Is that on our webpage, SNN?
Oh yeah, it's on SNN. Yeah, we have it, but we have the written version.
Let me see if I can find it.
And the words are so exact and fresh. It's the young girl's feeling after that tragedy and that the cruelty and the savagery that she lived through. The judge gives her rapist 6 months.
Oh yes.
And the rapist's father says to the judge, he writes a letter saying, well, it was only 20 minutes of pleasure. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's a tremendous difference between how we see rape. We still use it for entertainment, and while we still use rape for entertainment, we can't get that crazy when it happens in real life, because young boys are watching these movies. I remember the big hacking debacle when Sony's servers were hacked, and all those married men had been writing emails to their wives and their children and their mistresses too from the same account. So when all those emails were released, wives got to see their husband's email going to some other woman, and it was very sexy talk. They released all that stuff. And the one email that attracted my attention was when a Sony executive was saying in an email, hey, can we fit a rape scene in this episode? Because it was too boring for him. But exactly, it's considered comedic. Yeah. And that's something that we have to change.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about current events, we cannot ignore Bill Clinton and Hillary, and then Bill Cosby and Camille. In both cases, the men they had raped women. And you say the wonderful word, alleged. They raped women. They raped people. And their wives used the power of their money to protect them, and the power of their lawyers to protect them. I noticed that their lawyers are all kind of backing into the woodwork and getting all quiet, and they have all new lawyers. But it doesn't change the reality that in those days, that type of violence in sex and raping people was far more prevalent. Today it's not, it's just not tolerated, and societies change with the decades, and so do practices. They do. But at no time did CNN read the affidavits of Bill Cosby's alleged victims. None of their affidavits were read on the air, like the Stamford rape. The Stamford rape was a big tragedy because the boy was given 6 months. What about the tragedy of a repeat offender that has been protected by law firms for decades? Do you really think that Bill Cosby is smart enough to pull all this off by himself? Absolutely not. He had a lot of help, a lot of protection.
Money. Money is
protection.
power, right?
Money, absolutely.
And fame is even more.
Oh, it's worse. Here in the United States, they'll let someone famous get away with anything because they are famous for no other reason other than the fact that they're a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to talk about, in closing, I want to talk about domestic violence. It's such an important matter.
Okay, go ahead.
Several books in the last 20 or 30 years have been published, not talked about, but published through, sold at Amazon and all the bookstores, and they're out there, many of them are out there, where people detail the authors, and they talk to people, and they have affidavits where individuals state that they know they were listening to or they saw Hillary slap or throw something at Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
That's been going on for years. It happened in Arkansas. It happened more so in Washington, D.C. The Secret Service actually had a meeting because, as you know, there is a team that protects Hillary and there's a team that protects the president when Bill Clinton was the president.
Right.
And those two teams had to have a formal meeting, and yes, there are records to this effect. They had to have formal meetings on the fact that she walloped him, and if she hurt him, what could they do? What were the steps? What plans would they have? I mean, imagine that they have to do rehearsals and prepare for domestic violence between the president and his wife. And it's not the president, the man, who's the domestic violence abuser or perpetrator. It's his wife who's beating him up. And people are always talking about violence against women, but there's also a tremendous amount of violence against men that is never spoken about because the man doesn't want to seem less than a man or be emasculated by the idea that a woman is beating him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the first time that the public so wants to have a woman in charge and wants Hillary to take office that even though another book, of the many that exist that are already out there, but another book was released yesterday. It's by Gary Burns, I believe.
I have it here.
Crisis of Character.
Crisis of Character, I got it.
And there's, on the left is the cover for Crisis of Character, and then on the right there's the lovely Hillary Clinton, and Gary Burns, the former Secret Service agent assigned to her detail. And he says without question that she would wallop him, and that there was an event, one of many, where she threw a lamp at him, and when they went in the room, there was blood on Bill. He was cut. There was glass on the floor. She threw a lamp at him. She was very violent and horrible with the domestic help. But now, members of the domestic cleaning crew, you know, the housekeepers, cleaning personnel, as well as Secret Service, have all testified that she physically assaults the president. And this will be the first time, not only that we would have, many firsts. And not only that we would have the first female president, but we would also have the first domestic violence perpetrator in office that we knowingly are going to vote in. That things like that fascinate me. Talk about the makings of a movie. This is fantastic.
Wow.
I worry that one day, if she becomes president, they're going to go into the White House. She's going to come out alone in the morning and say, he's dead. I wouldn't be surprised, because she has no respect for the man, and rightly so with the way he's behaved. I'm not surprised that she hates him so. She doesn't respect him. Because like they say, teach people how to treat you.
Right.
And if you allow someone to speak to you in that form, with those types of words and those types of behaviors, that's what they're going to do, because that's what you've taught them. And he's allowed it. And doggone it, every now and again, he appears somewhere and he's got a cut on his head or a cut on his cheek. And poor thing, I wonder when he goes home if she doesn't just beat him just in case he did something wrong. I don't know.
Okay. Ruthie, well, this is a week that I believe is crucial for Trump, Clinton, and Sanders. People are very frustrated knowing that Sanders almost has no chance, although he will go to the Democratic convention. Come November, I guess we're going to find out, right? As I was saying at the beginning, it looks to me that it was a novela, a TV soap.
Absolutely.
From beginning to end, from June, when Donald Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency, which we remember, or I remember, that nobody believed it, and now he is at the point of being the nominee for the Republican, and Hillary is for the Democrats. So let's see what happens. Tomorrow morning, we will know if Hillary is the nominee, although it may be also decided at the convention.
Well, once she announced it, as far as I was concerned, there was no reason to even bother with anything else, because they jumped the gun to take the praise and take the position, whether they have it or not.
So that's where we are right now, and I hope we will be seeing all your posts on syndicated news, and everybody can visit our webpage, SNN.BZ. Any information, any thoughts that you may have, you can write to Ruthie at our webpage. You can subscribe, you can just view our webpage and be informed. Remember that the way I see it, Ruthie, is that we don't take sides on anything, but we can give our opinion. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we don't. I feel awful for Trump. It's my guilty pleasure. Donald Trump is my guilty pleasure. I like seeing him. I like hearing him stir the pot. It's exciting. It's fun, because what he's saying, it's ugly, but it's true. And the entire country that's behind him, they feel the same way. But he says ugly things that are totally unnecessary. Totally unnecessary. He takes ethnic shots at ethnic groups across the board. And that's impossible. He has to have some decorum. He has to have some collect where he's speaking correctly, calmly, with some diplomacy. Hillary's got it down pat. She knows how to say everything publicly, but then she'll go home and beat up her husband.
Right. Like many people, I believe that by Donald Trump opening his mouth, he has also opened a can of worms in terms of many voters, young voters, that are going to go and vote either for or against him. He's been characterized as a person that tells the truth, that tells what he thinks, but it may be also true that a lot of people think the same way.
The truth can be true. You know, lots of things are true. And if your mother just passed away and you don't know it, I'm not going to come over and say, Eduardo, by the way, yeah, pass me the coffee and your mother died. It's just inappropriate. It's inappropriate. And he wants to be truthful with things that are just inappropriate, that could be said quietly in private chambers. They don't have to be said out on a microphone.
Right.
It's not necessary.
Okay.
It's just not necessary.
Any final thoughts, Ruthie, before we go?
Well, I wish somebody would shake Donald and tell him to close his mouth and to start listening to people. When you're very, very wealthy and you surround yourself by people who kiss your butt, you tend to start believing the hype. And since people are dependent on him for a salary, they don't tell him the truth. They tell him anything they can that will keep their employment. And I see that all the time with very powerful people who are cruel.
Cruel.
After they say something cruel and vicious, they'll turn to their assistant and say, "That was okay, right?" Because they know it's not.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'll see you on SNN.BZ, Ruthie.
Yeah, see you then.
Okay.
Ciao.
And thank you for listening to us. This is Eduardo Quesada saying goodbye from California, USA. This is an election year, and it's a very interesting, which will end in November 8th. Thank you.